Not every love story gets a headline. Some are built behind closed doors, where the cameras can't follow and the industry can't rewrite the truth. Tonight on Silent Fame, we're counting down 10 Hollywood gay power couples who didn't just find love. They protected it, defended it, and sometimes paid for it. Hit subscribe now and stay with us, because couple number 10 will split the comments in half. 1. Matt Bomer and Simon Halls. The marriage Hollywood couldn't monetize. In Hollywood, privacy isn't a personality trait. It's a survival skill. And Matt Bomer learned early that the industry loves you most when it can label you, then sell you back to yourself. On screen, he was built for fantasy, leading man cheekbones, old school charm, the kind of face casting directors use like a safety blanket. But off screen, the real story wasn't a headline. It was a home. And at the center of that home was Simon Halls, a publicist, a strategist, a man who literally understands how narratives get manufactured and how fast they can be weaponized. That's the twist nobody talks about. This couple didn't just fall in love. They knew exactly what the spotlight costs. So they chose control. They kept their relationship quiet when it was dangerous, not because they were ashamed, but because they refused to let strangers turn their love into a talking point. And when they did share more, it was on their terms, measured, calm, almost frustratingly undramatic. There's even industry chatter still about opportunities that mysteriously cooled once the fantasy became too real. Whether that's true or myth, it exposes the ugly part. The public loves authenticity until it changes the product they were sold. Of course, the internet hates boundaries. People want a confession, a mess of "we suffered and now you must applaud." But Matt and Simon give something colder and maybe braver. Kids kept out of the circus. A marriage protected like intellectual property. Love as a private language, not a brand campaign. He doesn't owe us a press conference. He owes his family a life. And that's why the silence hits some people like an insult. So here's the grenade. Is that privacy courage or calculation? Is it dignity reclaimed or a quieter way of paying the straight tax to keep the leading man myth intact? Tell me what you think. When celebrities guard their love this hard, are they protecting something sacred or protecting an image? Drop your take below and hit subscribe if you're here for the stories that don't beg to be seen. They dare you to notice. 2. Tom Daley and Dustin Lance Black, the family the world thinks it owns. Some couples get wedding photos. Tom Daley and Dustin Lance Black got a jury. Tom is the Olympic golden boy, disciplined, beloved, broadcast into living rooms like a national treasure. Dustin is the storyteller, an Oscar-winning screenwriter who's spent a career turning queer pain into something the world can't ignore. Together, they look like a fairy tale, which is exactly why people feel entitled to critique every chapter. Because the moment they became parents, the spotlight shifted. It wasn't congrats. It was interrogation. Strangers debating their family like it's a policy issue. Comment sections moralizing about surrogacy as if queer fatherhood needs a permission slip. And suddenly, their love story wasn't just romance, it was surveillance. Remember, Tom grew up in a world that measured masculinity in medals and silence. Choosing a husband and then choosing fatherhood wasn't just romantic. It was a rewrite of what a champion is allowed to be. Here's the twist. They didn't hide. They just refused to perform. Tom shares pieces of his life, training, home moments, even the softness of domestic routines, then draws a hard line around what matters most. Dustin, who knows how narratives get weaponized, keeps reminding people that a family isn't a debate stage. But the drama is baked in. Are they icons because they're visible? Or targets because they dare to build something the world still treats as controversial? When straight celebrities have babies, it's gossip. When gay men do, it becomes ethics, economics, religion, politics, as if love is only pure when it's familiar. So I'm asking you, honestly, is surrogacy a right to build a family or a privilege only the famous can access? And if it's complicated, who gets to say that out loud without dehumanizing the kids involved? Drop your take in the comments and hit subscribe because Silent Fame isn't about fairy tales. It's about what love costs when everyone thinks they're allowed to judge it. 3. Kristen Stewart and Dylan Meyer, the anti-Hollywood love story that still went viral. Hollywood sells romance like a franchise. Red carpets, coordinated outfits, a perfect kiss on cue. Kristen Stewart and Dylan Meyer did the opposite. And somehow that made people watch even harder. Kristen grew up under a microscope. By the time she was an adult, the world had already decided what her relationships meant, what they proved, and who she was allowed to be. Dylan came from the writing side, less flash, more structure. And when they found each other, their love didn't look like a rollout. It looked like relief. Their power move wasn't loud pride. It was refusing the spectacle. No desperate couple branding. No constant proof-of-life posts. Just occasional glimpses, messy, funny, human, then back to silence. When they took the next step, they did it in a way that felt almost defiant, intimate, low-key, unbothered by the public's appetite. There's something almost tender about how they move, like two people who know the camera is a predator, not a friend. Kristen has spent years being decoded by strangers. With Dylan, she gets to be unreadable, just a woman loved without translation. That kind of safety is addictive, and to outsiders, it can look like distance. But here's the drama. The quieter they are, the more people project. Some fans romanticize it as authentic, others side-eye it as a new kind of PR. An anti-Hollywood aesthetic that still functions like a brand. Because let's be real, even refusing attention can become content. And if it is a strategy, does that make it any less real or just more honest about the game? So tell me, when a star refuses the spectacle, do you respect it more or trust it less? Does quiet love feel like liberation or like image management with better taste? Drop your verdict below and hit subscribe because couple number 10 will absolutely split this comment section in half. 4. Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi, the love story that survived the fall. Some couples fight tabloids. Ellen and Portia fought a myth that if you become an icon, you're no longer allowed to be human. They reconnected in 2004 and it moved fast, quietly, then all at once. By the time California legalized same-sex marriage, they didn't treat it like a celebrity event. They treated it like oxygen. In 2008, they married at home with a tiny guest list, intimate enough to feel like a promise, not a production. And for years, they looked untouchable. The funny one and the elegant one. The punchline and the poetry. But the twist, the part that makes this silent fame, is what happened when the public turned on Ellen. When workplace allegations and backlash hit, the America's Nicest brand cracked. She addressed it publicly and later framed her exit as being kicked out for being mean. Suddenly, their marriage wasn't just romance, it became a Rorschach test. To some people, Portia was standing by her. To others, she was trapped in the wreckage. And the internet did what it always does. It tried to turn love into a verdict. Then came the quiet escape. In 2024, Ellen and Portia moved to the UK, buying a home in the Cotswolds. Less Hollywood, more hedgerows. Depending on who you ask, that move is either a fresh start or exile with a garden. But here's what can't be denied. Through every headline, Portia stayed. Not performatively, not loudly, just consistently. And in a culture that demands public penance, consistency is the one thing nobody knows how to monetize. So let me ask you, when a couple disappears after a scandal, is it healing or hiding? And does cancel culture create accountability or just a new kind of banishment? Drop your take below and hit subscribe, because this countdown gets messier and the couples get harder to judge. 5. Elton John and David Furnish, the couple who took the tabloids to court. There are love stories written in vows, and then there are love stories written in legal language because the world refused to leave them alone. Elton and David have been together since the early 90s, long before the world wanted to clap for it. In 2005, they entered a civil partnership. On the very first day it became possible in England, and in 2014 they legally married 9 years to the day later. From the outside, it looks like a fairy tale with designer suits and Windsor light. But the twist is darker. Their relationship became a battleground for privacy itself. In 2016, a case widely reported as involving David Furnish, identified as PJS in court documents, turned into a global argument. Can you realistically keep intimate details private in the internet age? The UK Supreme Court upheld an injunction preventing publication in England and Wales, even as the story circulated elsewhere online. And that's the silent fame heartbeat right there. Two men with children watching the world treat their private life like public property, then choosing to fight back with the only weapon tabloids respect: consequences. Some people see that as protection. Others see it as privilege, because let's be honest, not everyone can afford privacy lawyers and injunctions. And that's where the comments section catches fire. So here's the question. Is using the law to protect your family a basic human right, or a luxury only famous queer couples can access? And if it's both, what do we do with that discomfort? Tell me where you land, and hit subscribe, because the next couple proves icon doesn't mean beyond criticism. 6. RuPaul and Georges LeBar, the icon who refused to be owned. RuPaul teaches the world how to be seen. But the man he married? He teaches Ru how to disappear. They met in 1994 at the Limelight in New York, one of those nightclub collisions that sounds too cinematic to be real. Georges LeBar didn't chase the spotlight. He ran in the opposite direction toward ranchland and silence. RuPaul later revealed they married in 2017, almost casually, like it was an inside joke the public didn't deserve to overhear. And then there's the twist that makes people argue for hours. RuPaul has openly discussed their relationship as non-traditional, pushing back on monogamy as an expectation, not a requirement. For some fans, that honesty feels liberating. For others, it reads like emotional chaos with good lighting. Either way, it's a mirror. It forces people to admit how much respectability they still demand from queer love. But the real drama isn't just about how they love. It's about what queer royalty is allowed to get away with. Reports and profiles have sparked controversy around mineral rights leasing connected to LeBar's ranch and accusations tied to fracking, prompting backlash from environmental critics and intense debate inside queer fandom. And suddenly, people ask the forbidden question: can an icon be both groundbreaking and deeply flawed? That's the silent fame tension. RuPaul built a global empire out of self-expression, yet he protects his private life like a locked room. Not because he's ashamed, because he doesn't want to be consumed. So tell me, do you think open love is freedom or avoidance? And when your favorite queer legend gets criticized, do you defend them out of loyalty or hold them to the same standards as everyone else? Drop your verdict. Hit subscribe. The countdown only gets sharper from here. 7. Neil Patrick Harris and David Burtka, the couple who learned to live after the punchline. Hollywood loves Neil Patrick Harris because he makes everything look easy. The smile, the timing, the charm, like confidence is a suit he never takes off. But the real magic trick wasn't the career. It was building a life that couldn't be reduced to a punchline. Neil became a household name in an era when gay men on TV were allowed to be funny, as long as they weren't too real. And when he stepped into his own truth publicly, people didn't just support him, they drafted him. Overnight, he wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol, a lesson plan, a comforting headline strangers could use to prove they were progressive. David Burtka never fit that box. He's quieter, a working actor and chef, a person with his own craft, his own pride, and a steadiness that doesn't photograph as loudly as fame. And that's the twist. Their power isn't just celebrity, it's curation. They've always treated their relationship like a home with a locked gate, letting you see the porch light, but not the bedroom. Because they learned fast that the internet doesn't simply watch queer love. It audits it, it grades it, it demands proof, then punishes you for showing any. They've taken hits, backlash, old moments resurfacing, the kind of forever punishment culture where one mistake becomes your entire personality. For a while, it felt like people were waiting for their family to crack so they could say, "See? It was never real." And imagine living with that, raising kids while strangers argue about whether you deserve them. But here's what's quietly devastating. They didn't answer the noise with the circus. They kept going. Not with a staged redemption tour, just the unglamorous work of staying married, showing up, doing better, and protecting the parts of their life that the public would happily chew up for entertainment. So here's the question that will start a war in the comments. When a queer couple guards their privacy this hard, is it integrity or branding? And when someone messes up publicly, do we want growth or do we just want blood? Drop your take below and hit subscribe, because the closer we get to couple Nazos 10, the harder it gets to decide who's right. 8. Sarah Paulson and Holland Taylor. The love story that made people choose sides. Some couples get judged for cheating. These two got judged for existing. Sarah Paulson is the kind of actor who makes pain look expensive. Prestige roles, awards buzz, that trembling honesty that feels like she's confessing even when she's acting. Holland Taylor is a legend with a blade. Sharp, elegant, and utterly unbothered by anyone's approval. When they became a couple, the internet didn't respond with curiosity. It responded like a courtroom. Because the headline was never just love. It was the age gap. Decades between them, enough for strangers to turn their relationship into a meme, a diagnosis, or a moral lecture. People called it weird. People called it gross. People called it goals. And every time someone typed mother and daughter, you could almost hear the misogyny underneath the joke. Women's desire is only acceptable when it's easy to consume. Here's the twist that makes it even messier. They've never sold this relationship as a product. No constant proof. No performance of normal. They've talked about doing things their own way. Keeping independence, not forcing the traditional template, even not living on top of each other just to satisfy what couples are supposed to do. And that drives people crazy, because we're used to couples giving us a lifestyle package. The house, the ring, the endless updates. Sarah and Holland give you something steadier. longevity without performance. Under the debate is something quieter and more brutal. Queer women are allowed to be cute until they stop being harmless. An older woman with power, a younger woman who refuses to apologize for desire. That's when the audience gets uncomfortable, because it reminds them love isn't here to reassure you. Love is here to happen. So tell me, honestly, is this relationship radical because it breaks the rules? Or is it just a private choice the internet turned into a spectacle? And if you're brave, answer this too. Would people be this vicious if they were a straight couple? Drop your truth below and hit subscribe, because the next chapters get even more private and even more explosive. 9. Jodie Foster and Alexandra Hedison. The love story built like a locked door. Jodie Foster grew up with cameras aimed at her like searchlights. Child star, two-time Oscar winner. A director with a mind like steel. And for decades, she mastered the only role Hollywood never hands you a script for: protecting your private life. That's why her love story hits differently. Not because it's flashy, because it isn't. Because in an industry that treats intimacy like content, Jodie and Alexandra chose restraint as their romance language. Alexandra Hedison isn't a tabloid accessory. She's an artist, photographer, director, former actress, someone who understands images, and also understands what images cost. And together, they built something quietly radical, a marriage that refuses to be consumed. In 2013, when Jodie accepted the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the Golden Globes, she spoke about coming out in a way that felt less like a reveal and more like a boundary. She didn't want her life turned into a spectacle just so the public could feel informed. A year later, she married Alexandra, privately, without the Hollywood fireworks. And here's the tension that keeps people arguing. Some fans call that secrecy. Others call it survival. Because for Jodie's generation, visibility wasn't a brand, it was a risk. Every quiet choice was negotiated with stigma, with gossip, with the threat of being reduced to one word instead of a lifetime of work. Lately, she's offered rare glimpses, shout-outs on big stages, small lines about being in awe of her wife, that land like a whisper after decades of noise. Not a rebrand, a release. Like she's saying, you can have my art. You don't get to own my love. So tell me, when a couple stays this private, is it courage? Or is it a scar that never fully healed? Comment your truth and hit subscribe, because the final couple is younger, louder, and still fighting the same old scoreboard. 10. Ben Platt and Noah Galvin. The love story the internet keeps scoring. Some couples fall in love. These two got reviewed. Ben Platt and Noah Galvin didn't meet as strangers. They met inside the same role, Evan Hansen, on the same Broadway-to-screen pipeline that turns young actors into public property. And once the world realized they were together, it did what it always does to queer joy. It started keeping score. They confirmed their relationship in 2020, and almost immediately the comments turned into a scoreboard. Who's bigger? Who's helping? Who's carrying the spotlight? Who's getting accused of being too much of something? Too famous? Too privileged? Too visible? Love wasn't allowed to just be love. It had to be a debate. In November 2022, Ben proposed. Then Noah proposed back, because even their tenderness came with a twist, as if they needed to keep proving the romance was mutual, equal, real. And on September 1st, 2024, they got married in Brooklyn, surrounded by friends, family, and the kind of chosen community energy queer people build when the world is still deciding if we're acceptable. Here's what gets me. They're young enough to live in an era where being gay isn't supposed to be a big deal, and yet they're still punished for being seen. The hate is slicker now. It hides behind opinions, behind stan wars, behind "I'm just asking questions." But it's the same old discomfort with two men choosing each other loudly, and then you catch them in small moments, like Noah fixing Ben's hair on a red carpet. So ordinary it almost feels revolutionary. Because it's proof. They aren't a headline, they're a life. So I'm ending with this. Is the ultimate couple the one that lasts, or the one that refuses to perform for your approval? Tell me in the comments. And if you felt something tonight, hit subscribe. Because the real power couples aren't perfect. They're persistent. And that's the part people forget. These couples weren't just dating in public. They were surviving in public. Through whispers, stigma, respectability tests, and a world that loves queer love only when it stays convenient. So tell me, which couple felt the most ultimate to you? The loudest, the quietest, or the one who kept standing after the world tried to knock them down? Drop your take below. If you made it to the end, I see you. Subscribe for the stories that don't beg for attention. They dare history to tell the truth.